Hey guys, I think we're live. I'm going to wait a moment uh, for people to arrive for the talk. Also going to invite some people who might be interested in our talk tonight. If you have any questions, just leave them in the chat for me. If you want to say hey, you can do that as well in the chat. Love to hear from you. And I'm just inviting, what you're hearing and what you're seeing is just me inviting a bunch of people to the talk here. We'll get started in a minute. All right, so let's see. Hi, Maggie. Dasha, welcome. Sibley, Kathleen, good to see you. John, good to see you. Samantha, hello. All right, Dad, good to see you. All right, so hopefully everyone can hear me okay. Last week we had a problem with the sound. Tried to do a live stream kirtan thing, a little bit of chanting, and the sound didn't work, unfortunately. So that was most unfortunate. I am going to move my mic, though, because it is getting warm in here. So just give me a moment. It's going to make a little bit of noise. It's going to do this. I'm going to take my hoodie off. It's going to get a little warm in here, I think. All right. Okay, so hopefully everyone who wants to hear the whole talk is already here already. If not, you can always go back and watch it again at a later time. I do keep these up on Facebook and I post them on the Patreon page. And for those of you who don't know, the Patreon page is full of yoga practices. So yin practices, yang practices, vinyasa. I think this week I'm going to put up a classical or hatha yoga class. There's some pranayams that I taught earlier during the pandemic. Yoga nidras, there are meditation instructions. Those are probably about a month ago I did those, but they're just as relevant today as before. So definitely if you get a chance, check that out. It's a resource for you, and it is donation based. the thing I feel is most appropriate right now is that those who have work and those who can afford it and are using the practices can contribute what they think is fair or what they feel inspired to contribute. And then those that can't, those who are out of work, those who are, scared about their financial situation, then they can take advantage of these practices. And, that way the whole community sort of supports one another. And we don't have to worry about, if you pay this much, you get access to this. If you pay that much, you get access to that. If I can avoid doing that, I'm going to avoid that. So I'm really dependent on the community now to support me, and that you have been. So I really appreciate that. And hopefully we can continue with that. All right. So today I want to talk about planning. Very common question when people begin to investigate their relationship with their thoughts and questioning their thoughts and living in the present. One of the most common things that comes up is, well, how do I make plans? What about planning things? Don't I have to make plans for the future? If I'm living in the present, then, everything's going to fall apart. And it's not really the case. And so today I want to investigate a little bit about planning and our relationship with planning. Okay. And I might do another talk on this at another time. Most of these subjects are deep enough that I could do a series of talks on one subject. All right. So I want you to imagine a vacation. And this is one where you have tons of plans. You want to see all the sites. Maybe you're going to Paris or Venice or Rome. You've got a ton of, you've just got the book and it's got a million things that you need to see. You've got a few days or maybe a week, and you have all these things that you need to hit. Well, maybe you've heard the expression, if you want to make God laugh, then have a plan. I love that expression. So, our egos love planning things, and they love projecting into the future, imagining what the future will be like, imagining that if it plans everything out and if it gets the plan, if the plan works out, what the ego sort of holds out for us as a carrot is you're going to be happy. Whether that's conscious or not, that's generally what we're thinking. Whether we're in college and we're working towards a degree, whether it's a vacation that we're planning, whatever it is, there's usually that carrot is if you do this, 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 and this, if you follow the plan and the plan works out, you are going to be happy. So there's some truth in that expression, right? If you want to make God laugh, create a plan. How often do your plans work out? And then how often do they work out and then you actually feel the gratification that you think? I mean, you don't have to answer. Obviously, I can't hear you, but consider that. Consider that. How often do our plans actually work out? How many plans do we make and how often do they actually work out? And then when they do work out, how often is that actually what we thought it would be? If we're not paying attention, by the time we complete one plan, we're already making another plan. We don't even enjoy the fact that we achieved what it is we wanted to achieve. Or if we do, we have a really short little celebration and then it's over. Okay, so the more plans that we have, the less likely they're all going to work out, right? If I have one simple plan or a very simple idea about what I'd like to achieve, then there might be a good chance, especially if it's not super ambitious, then there's going to be a good chance that it's going to work out. If I'm going to Italy and I say I want to see the Sistine Chapel, and that's it, probably a good chance I'm going to do that. Also, probably a pretty good chance I won't be that stressed out achieving that goal. But what if I want to see all the famous sites? What if I want to see all the famous museums? I have all these things that I need to do. Well, now my time, now I have to start planning my time, chopping up my day. And now if anything goes sideways on me, it's going to ruin the whole thing, right? So the more plans I have and the more rigid my plans, the less likely it's going to work out. Now, this isn't to say that sometimes our plans don't work out. As I said earlier, sometimes things align. But this is an important point. And you may not understand this point today, and that's okay. These talks, they're not really meant for you to agree with everything I'm saying. That's not the point. I'm not even saying I'm right about everything. Okay, this isn't about right and wrong. This isn't about, it's not, like politics where we're trying to decide who's right and who's honest and all this. This isn't how spirituality works, guys. It's not, I'm not giving you this talk so that you'll sit there nodding your head, agreeing with me, or saying, oh yes, he's right about that. The talk is a pointer. It's pointing to something. Okay, so I want you to focus on, in Zen we have a saying, when someone is pointing at the moon, look at the moon and not the finger. So if you obsess too much about my words or me as an individual, like, oh, Doug, he's, I don't like him, he's this or that, then you're looking at the finger, you're not looking at the pointer. My whole teaching is pointing to something, and that something is inside of you. It's inside of everything. It's inside of everyone. It's everywhere. Okay? And so that's what we want to see. So everything I'm teaching, more or less, is ultimately pointing to this thing. So sometimes things work out. And what I'd like to say to you today, and again, you don't have to agree with it, but I'd like you to just let it sit with you. You don't do anything. You don't make anything happen. Okay? The only way anything happens is because the entire universe conspires with you. Not saying you don't play a role, okay? You play a role, you play a part. But the entire universe conspires so that whatever it is that you are hoping to do, that you want to do, happens. That includes this next breath that you're going to take. Now, you might be thinking, no, I'm doing that. Oh, I'm going to decide not to take the next breath. Well, that's, if you succeed in not taking that next breath, that's because the entire universe conspires with you to allow you to not take that breath. Now, again, this isn't something that you need to agree with or not agree with. That isn't important, okay? This is coming from a different place, and it's just something, again, that I want it to just sort of simmer. I want you to sort of sit with that and live with that. That without the cooperation of the entire universe, we don't achieve or do anything. And this is very humbling, and that's good. We as human beings, we should be humble. Why? Because we're happiest when we're humble. What this means is we both cannot take credit for our greatest achievements because we were just a cog in a much larger conspiracy of the universe to make whatever it is that happened. We had a role to play and we played our part. Now, maybe our invention or that creation bears our name. Well, that's nice. But it would not have happened without, again, the rest of the universe, other people, other things conspiring to make that a possibility. Okay? Likewise, we don't take full blame for anything. Okay, now I don't want to get too far into this because psychologically speaking and from a spiritual perspective, it's very advantageous for us to accept full responsibility for things. Now, I want to distinguish between responsibility and blame. Okay, because blame has a lot of judgment attached with it. Responsibility, I'm going to say, doesn't. Okay, so again, this isn't the point of today's talk, so I'm not going to get too far into it, but it is very empowering when we accept full responsibility for situations and for things, when we stop becoming the victim. All right, and that's really the key word there. Because when I'm trying to spread the blame around, I'm usually doing that so that I'm the victim of a situation. Oh, it's not my fault. This happened because of this person, that person. They did this. They told me that. My parents did this, right? I was raised like that. So I'm trying to spread out the blame, right? I'm not the one to blame. And what that does is it makes us very powerless. Because it seems like, you know, there's all these other people that are doing things that are getting in the way of what we want to happen or what we think should happen. So it's tricky, but again, I'm not going to get too deep into that, but I want you to consider that. So we don't really make anything happen. And one really powerful quote from scripture, it's one of my favorite quotes ever. It comes from the Bhagavad Gita. Is Krishna is talking to Arjuna, the warrior, and Arjuna is talking about, oh, if I do this, I'm going to kill these people, all this stuff. Again, he thinks he does it. He thinks he's the actor. And Krishna, more or less, in the Bhagavad Gita says, you're my instrument. You are my instrument. I play you. I'm God. I am the creator. I am everything. And I play you. Your job is to play your part. Your job is to participate in this dance that I've created. And in yoga, sometimes it's called the dance of Shiva. Anyway, the quote that I love is, he says, Arjuna, if you think you can kill or be killed, you do not understand reality's subtle ways. I love that. If you are sitting there thinking you can kill or be killed, if you think you have that power without my blessing, you are very confused, my son. That's basically what he's saying. Okay, now again, we want to be careful. I'm not saying that you go out and kill someone or do something wrong and then say, oh, well, you know, Krishna wanted me to do it because I couldn't have done it without Krishna's consent. Well, then maybe Krishna wants you to go to prison too when you get caught or get killed. All right, so that's, if we're going to think in those terms, well, Krishna wanted me to do it or else I wouldn't have been able to do it. Well, then when you get caught and killed or punished, then that's also Krishna as well. So we need to be careful playing that game. So again, for us as seekers and on this path, there's certain thoughts that are very powerful and very freeing, and they can give us a lot of energy and a lot of power. And there are other thoughts that we can use that are dangerous, that are for spiritual bypassing, for trying to make ourselves, again, the victim of certain situations, and we want to avoid those thoughts. Again, several weeks ago, maybe even a month ago now, we talked a lot about thoughts sort of as tools of using and picking the right thoughts. All right, so sometimes we get what we want effortlessly, and that's very nice when that happens. But really, honestly, if we really track it, you know, how often does this happen? Now, again, simple things. If I wake up and I'm like, I want a cup of coffee, and I'm going to make a cup of coffee in 10 minutes, it's probably going to happen. But we don't usually get too angsty about making a cup of coffee in the morning, right? It's our longer term plans, it's our bigger plans where we start to feel that anxiety that can come in. Also, I'll say this, some egos, the ego has a certain kind of energy of its own. And some egos are very good at getting what they want. But the question that I'll ask is, at what cost and to whom? So some people, again, on paper, they can say, I'm going to do this, and they do it. And on the outside, it might look very impressive. And the world might even reward us and say, you set out to do what you want to do. But this is where going inward becomes very important for us. Because sometimes when we achieve our goals and we go inside, we find that they're really empty. They are not fulfilling us on any kind of deep level. And then if we pay attention and we look around, especially if it was an ego gratifying goal, then we find there's a lot of collateral damage. There's a lot of people that have been hurt by us pursuing, doggedly pursuing our goal of excellence or whatever it is that we were pursuing. So again, at what cost? The cost might be as simple as our peace of mind, or the peace of mind of those around us, and sometimes there's even greater cost. So again, not everyone is like that, but some people, some egos, they create business after business after business. They achieve, life goal after life goal. But again, we tend to, ooh, oh, wow, oh, you're a billionaire. When was the last time you met a billionaire and you thought, oh, God? Now some people do think that, right? Habitually. So like anything else, there are some billionaires who, they're awesome people. And there are some billionaires who are horrible people. Okay, so we don't want to say the fact that someone has $1 billion, that means something one way or the other. So let's say you're on this vacation, you've got all these plans, and yeah, maybe you see all the sights, and in the process, you traumatize your children and you push your spouse one step closer to divorce. But you got your way. And I know people like this. I have people like this in my own family who, at any cost, they're going to get what, they made the plan and the plan's going to happen. Now, most people aren't like that. People who are a little healthier, they're usually not like that to that extreme. But again, this is something that shows up for us in more subtle ways as well. So I might illustrate it as an extreme, but we want to notice the subtle ways in which this happens for us. So, maybe on your way to see all the sights, you curse out the taxi driver, call him an idiot, whatever, you yell at the concierge at the hotel. And, maybe you're happy. You got your goal. You saw all the sights. But again, often, if we're honest, if we go inside and we look, a lot of times it's a sort of hollow victory. And that's one thing that Eckhart said, and I concur, I agree with him wholeheartedly. He says, if you achieve a goal and there isn't a sense of contentment in it, there really isn't a sense of sort of peace that comes with that, a more lasting peace, then that was probably an ego goal. It was probably just your ego checking another box. I exist. Because that's what the ego is really trying to do. I mean, that's why Facebook is a great example of that, right? People going to exotic places, taking tons of photos and putting them up and having everyone say how amazing their life is. Why do they do that? Because they don't believe it. Now I'm generalizing, so maybe you do that and maybe you do believe it. Okay, great. But a lot of this show, the social media show of look how amazing my life is. I'm showing you in pictures. Here's the evidence. Here's the proof. I just got back from Barbados. I just got back from the Czech Republic. Look at all the amazing things I did. Look at all the amazing people I talked to. Look at the achievements I've made. Look, I'm the CEO of this business. All of this is because the ego doesn't believe any of it. And so it's looking for affirmation from other people. So when other people say, oh my God, you made it, then it is saying, oh, okay, good, I did? Yeah, you think so? Oh, wonderful. We love the little likes, right? The likes on our posts, like. Oh, awesome. Okay, yes, I exist. The trouble from a Buddhist perspective is we don't exist, not in that way. The ego doesn't really exist, and that's the problem. It has this huge hole, this gap. Some people call it a God-sized gap. And some people feel that way in their life. I have a God-sized gap in my life, and I'm trying to fill it with likes on Facebook and Ben and Jerry's ice cream and alcohol and life achievements and, posts on Instagram, and nothing works. It might work for a moment. We feel a little better. Again, we post something, it goes viral. Like, woo! I'm doing it. I'm making it. I'm getting attention. Finally, people are recognizing like how amazing I am. And then it stops. We get our 15 minutes of fame, and then we're back to, that's the thing. The ego is never satisfied. It's constantly in need of that reassurance, because again, it doesn't believe it. It doesn't matter what you achieve. It's never going to be satisfied. And that's why the end of this path is always about ultimately uprooting and dissolving the ego. Now, that is a long, arduous path, but the good news is we can start at any time. Okay? And like the Chinese say, that old Chinese saying, a journey of 1,000 miles starts with one step. So we don't have to worry about the end goal. What's important for us is we are on the path, we are on the journey. So hopefully you see I'm using this vacation as a metaphor for our lives. Now again, some people think that when I talk about present moment awareness, which I haven't in this particular talk, but I talk a lot about letting go of thoughts, things like that, you think or interpret that as, okay, I can't make plans. How do I make plans? If I'm not thinking, if I'm not doing all this stuff, I can't make any plans. My life is going to fall apart. For some of you, I'm actually going to say that that might not be a bad idea temporarily. To go cold turkey without plans, without a future, and just be. Meditation is essentially that for, like I teach 21 minutes. So for 21 minutes, that's essentially what I'm asking you to do. But for some people, it might be helpful to do that for a longer period of time. And so many of you have been on retreat with me, and this is one of the reasons why we go on retreat. We don't make the plans, right? We made the plan to go to the retreat, but once we're there, the timetable isn't set by us. And this is how traditional spiritual communities are. This is very different to the modern idea of retreat, which is everything is optional, and we get up at like 9:30 and go by the bar for a drink first, have a swim in the pool, and then we have our first practice, and then we go eat lunch or whatever, and maybe there's another practice. You go to the beach and then drink, until 3 in the morning, get up the next day and do it again. That's called a yoga retreat. I call that a vacation with yoga. And again, I'm not trying to demean anybody or put anybody down, but something like that, there's not really enough yoga. And again, part of what makes a retreat powerful, part of what makes going to an ashram or to a monastery powerful, is that it is in opposition to what our ego wants, to its preferences. And our ego thinks, I have to have my preferences met to be happy. That's sort of what most of us believe. And I hear this all the time when I leading retreat. Oh, well, I like to have my coffee at this in the morning, and I need my XYZ, and I have to have da 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 da. Everyone's got their routine. They've got their pet beverages that they have to have, all these things. And what can be very powerful for us on retreat is to have all of that stripped away. And again, you have to go on the right retreat. And if you go to a monastery, if you go to an ashram, that's generally the way it is. They're not asking you what your preferences are. They're telling you what you're going to do when you're going to do it. Now, the interesting thing that happens is if we really take part, even if we resist oftentimes, and this is an interesting part of it, like, because the whole time we might be in resistance, we might still find, if it's long enough and if it's extreme enough, we might still find at the end of that, we feel better and we feel happy. And why? I didn't get anything I wanted. I didn't want to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning. I didn't want to do 3 hours of meditation. I didn't want to eat that food. I wanted my coffee and I didn't get it. I wanted a drink at night. I didn't get it. Why do I feel so amazing? Why do I feel so good? Because all of that weakened the ego. And we feel better and we are happier without it. The more that I gratify and sort of indulge my ego and my, again, pet desires and needs and all this stuff, then very often I'm actually digging myself a hole. I'm strengthening that egoic identity. So again, for some people, this can be very powerful, and that's one of the reasons why we do so many retreats during normal times. Right now, we obviously can't do something like that. But it's something to keep in mind. You know, this is an experience that we can have sometimes when we travel to a foreign place. And again, it breaks our routine, it breaks our norm. And we can find ourselves really living in the present moment because we don't know what's going to happen next. We're not used to things. You know, some places you go in the world, the toilets are different. You know, and you walk in, you're like, what is this? How do I go to the bathroom? Everything's different. The food's different. The language is different. The customs are different. So the ego is disoriented and it can't make plans. Like, this is a great way to vacation, you know, go someplace, don't take the tour book with you, show up and, you know, without an agenda, without a plan, start to see what unfolds and what happens. And you can enter into a very sort of spiritual state. Now, that word spiritual, a lot of people wouldn't, you don't have to call it spiritual. A lot of people just say, oh, I went on this trip and I just felt amazing. You know, why do you feel amazing? It's the same thing. It's a spiritual state. You're basically in present moment awareness. They're not aware that that's why they feel so amazing, but that's essentially what's happening. So, how long can you go without thinking that you know what will happen next? So again, in meditation, this is where we can practice this. Sitting there, facing the wall with our eyes open for 21 minutes, and we just don't know. We don't know what we're going to do next. We don't know what's going to happen that day. We just let go of everything. We don't know what should happen. Most of us can't really do that for very long, if we're honest with ourselves. How long can we allow someone or something else to call the shots? And how afraid do we get when we do that? When we say, when we recognize, really, because that's what it is, it's a recognition, my small self, my planning self, is not really in control here. It never has been, and it never will be. Again, sometimes the universe conspires to make it seem like we are very powerful, like we are in charge, like we are president, like we are whatever it is. But it is an illusion, and it is grace. It is pure grace. So, for instance, today I am healthy. I have control of my limbs. I can breathe easily. Okay? I'm not sick or ill. Tomorrow could be a different story. And if you don't believe that can happen to you, I'll tell you, rest assured, it happens to people all the time. And one of our Sangha members this happened to recently. Many of you know Petra, and she recently passed away. So last November, not that long ago, she had a test. because once you've had cancer, you have regular tests, came back negative, seemed like everything was fine. And then a few months later, she's passed away. Okay, so our ego doesn't like that idea. It likes to think, no, I know, I'm okay, I'm healthy, I eat, raw foods, and I'm taking care of myself, whatever it is, whatever sort of ritual we've come up with to tell ourselves that this is going to keep us safe. We're all going to die. We are all going to die. And in ancient times, yogis used to sit in the burial grounds where they would cremate bodies, because in India, they don't really bury them. So they would cremate the bodies there, and they would watch the bodies burn. And there's a reason that they did that. This is what this body is essentially, this thing that's burning in front of me that turns to ash. This is what this ultimately is. And this one day will be like that body, and it will burn to ash. Okay? So again, a lot of us think we're calling the shots. A lot of us think we know what should be happening, and we think we have the ability to control what's happening. And we can ask ourselves the question, how in the world did the world get along before we showed up? How did anyone know what to do, and how did anything happen without us? Because my God, we are so darn important. Thank God we showed up so we could set everyone straight and get everyone on the right page, right? I mean, we know so much. We know exactly what everyone should be doing. We know exactly how to make everyone happy and healthy, because we're so happy and healthy, aren't we? We've got it all figured out. Well, oftentimes we say, well, no, I'm not quite happy and healthy, but that's because of those people. And again, this is part of my teaching. No victim, no victims. You don't get to blame someone else for that. You have to take full responsibility for your happiness, for your peace. And that's how you get your spiritual power back. And it's amazing when you do. And again, this isn't about you agreeing with me or not agreeing with me or thinking it's true or not. These are things to practice. And when you practice them, you realize the truth of what I'm saying and how powerful what I'm saying is, okay? So again, why didn't God put us in charge of everything? We're God's gift, right? We can see right from wrong so clearly. Other people are so confused. Why don't they get it? So anyway, if we were to go to an ashram or a retreat or a monastery, doing these things would potentially break our addiction to control and to planning. Now, the rub is that eventually that can become normal. So eventually then we can essentially become addicted to, ashram life and monastery living or retreats. And you can't really, it's hard with retreats because they always end. So you're always kind of dumped back into your life. And that's actually a good thing about retreats. So, from my perspective, it can be very beneficial to retreat temporarily. And temporarily can be, a weekend, a week, a month, a few years. It just really kind of depends. But then from where I'm sitting and with my experience with this stuff, I mean, you can achieve amazing states on retreats. And to some degree, the longer the retreat, the more amazing. But is that all it is? Is that all retreats are? Is that all spirituality is having an amazing experience, a transcendent experience? For me, the answer is no. So we can have wonderful experiences, but then the real question is, how do we embody what we realized on retreat or in the ashram or in the monastery? How do we live that? When we understand our true nature, when we understand what we really are, how does that embody in living a human life, a good human life? What does that really mean? And I'm not saying I have the answers. I think these are questions that we are just constantly asking ourselves. So it can be useful to break our addiction and our illusion of control and our illusion that, we have to, our plans have to work out for us to be happy. But at the same time, plans are necessary, aren't they? Just like thoughts. Like some people think meditation is about not having thoughts. I mean, when you hear Eckhart Tolle talk, he's thinking. He's thinking. He's using his mind. He wrote the power. He says so himself. He wrote The Power of Now using his mind. He's using thoughts. So this spirituality is not about no thoughts. It's, again, as I say, it's about the right relationship with our thoughts. Same way, this is not about not living in the present, is not about not planning, but it is about having the right relationship with our plans. So our plans don't have to be elaborate. We don't necessarily have to make a lot of them, and we can let them go when they are not appropriate. Now, like I said earlier, generally the more plans we have, the less likely they're going to work out, and generally the more stress. Okay, so again, I've traveled with people before who are planners. They like to plan every minute throughout the day. What are we going to do at this time? Where are we going to go? We're going to see all of this stuff. And it's extremely stressful for them, and it's stressful to be with them because, again, it's very difficult. The more plans, the more elaborate, the more likely something will go wrong. And then when something goes wrong, the bus is late or whatever it is, then everyone's anxious. Everyone's, nervous about what's going to happen. Again, so the more elaborate a plan is, the more plans we have, the more things we're trying to, control the way that they go, then the more likely we're to run into a problem with that. And then letting go of plans. This is when things don't work out. So for instance, this year I had a yin training that was supposed to happen next month in June. I haven't heard anything, but I don't think that's going to happen. People aren't leaving their homes, so I don't think we're going to be able to have a room full of yogis learning about yin yoga together. Then in August, I had a retreat planned, and we had a few people signed up before the pandemic, and almost everyone is canceled now, and we haven't had any new signups. Everyone's in wait and see mode. Well, I have to make a decision way before August whether that's going to happen. So if people don't start signing up, I'm going to have to cancel it. That was hours of planning and work that went into that. And I tell you this because I'm going to probably have to let that plan go. Okay? Instead of stressing out about it, instead of ruminating about it, instead of, thinking about what could have been, what I think should have been, there's a bigger plan at work here, isn't there? The pandemic it's not my plan. It's not the government's plan. I know some people like to think that, coronavirus was made in a lab and somebody is doing this to us. I mean, who's profiting from this? It's really not very clear to me. And I know there was some video going around pandemic. Well, I watched a video by this doctor, and I mean, he was basically just poking holes in this thing, one thing after another. And he wasn't being disrespectful, actually. I mean, he was being just very calm and very matter of fact about, look, this doesn't hold water. This doesn't hold together. It's really not clear who would be benefiting from this. shutting down the economy. It's not the government, it's not business that's making a lot of money from this. So it's very hard to say exactly who's benefiting from the pandemic happening. So anyway, we need plans. You can't get to work without a plan. You probably couldn't have made this Dharma talk without some kind of a plan. And again, sometimes everything works out without planning, but a lot of the time we have to have some kind of a plan. We need something. So it's not, again, planning that's the issue. It's really the right relationship with our plans. What is the right relationship with our plans? So our attachments are problematic. So attachments, again, if I am emotionally attached. So the retreat in August, and this was a dream of mine, to be honest with you. This is something I've been working towards for years. It took me a lot of work and effort to find the right musicians to plan this. A lot of back and forth with the retreat center to put it together, a lot of negotiation with the musicians, and it's probably not going to happen. And so if I have an emotional reaction to that, oh my God, it's not going to happen. Oh, I can't believe it. That's a problem. That means I'm not in right relationship with my plans. Now, you might think that hearing me say that means that you can stop that reaction the next time that a plan of yours doesn't work out. That's not what that means. I was able to not react to the fact that this is probably not going to happen because of years of training. So we can train ourselves to have a different response, a different emotional response to things like this. And again, really the first step is meditation, regular seated meditation, not just any meditation. I was talking with a student today, and they were saying that they do, mantra meditation. There's lots of beautiful practices that are called meditation. So I'm not putting anything like that down, but maybe I need to come up with a different word for what I'm calling meditation, because everyone's calling everything else meditation. In the yoga tradition, anything that requires your kind of focus or concentration is usually called a dharana, which translates as concentration. So that would be mantra, that would be chakra meditation, that would be visualization, that would be loving kindness, anything where you are trying to focus your attention or you're trying to do something. Meditation is when you let go of that. It's yin and yang, right? So concentration, I'm making an effort, I'm trying to focus on my mantra versus I'm letting go. Now, there's a lot of overlap there, and it's a very subtle distinction. So I don't want to oversimplify this, but that is basically the bare bones of it. What I'm calling meditation is the one time during your day when you're really trying to let go and let God. Have you heard that before? Now, again, some people are allergic to the word God because they think I'm referring to an old, white, bearded man sitting in a cloud. I am not. Insert universe, insert source, insert true nature, insert, Brahman. It doesn't matter to me. Buddha nature, Christ consciousness. Okay, I'm comfortable with all of those terms because I recognize that all those terms point to the same thing. Unfortunately, sometimes when people are brought up within one tradition, they don't recognize that other traditions are pointing to the same thing with a different word, and that's a very unfortunate thing. Another thing that's problematic is our projections and our thoughts about the future. So for instance, let's say this retreat that I was planning, it was called Kirtan Space Camp. Let's say that doesn't happen. Let's say tomorrow I have to cancel it for whatever reason, and it doesn't happen. And in my mind, what I've projected into the future is a lovely retreat. Everyone's getting along, having a good time. We're chanting, the music sounds good, everyone's having a good time. The reality of it might have been a nightmare. And so the fact that we had to cancel might have just spared me. Who knows what kind of nightmare could have unfolded there? Maybe everyone on the retreat got food poisoning, or maybe a new strain of coronavirus pops up and we all get it. We didn't know about it. It's some kind of like uber deadly form that, kills young people and healthy people, not just elderly and sick people. So again, when I believe my thoughts, when I project into the future and I say, oh, I know that would have been the best retreat, it would have been so great, and now I have to cancel it, it's because I'm believing my thoughts. And so again, this goes back to our other talk, which if you haven't heard it, you should go back and listen to that one, because that's really the foundation. I can't believe my thoughts. My thoughts, my projections about the future are not the future. It's just not real. And for all we know, when our plans are foiled, that is for our greatest good. That is for our greatest good and for the greatest good of the all, of everyone, for the universe. Because again, we don't make anything happen on our own. The whole universe conspires to make it happen. So the right relationship with the plan is I can make a plan, no problem with that, but I am not attached to it. If you find you're attached to your plans, which means you get emotional about them, then you have a lot of work to do in terms of your meditation. Again, if you need help with meditation, reach out. I'm really I have a little more free time than usual now, and I'm doing a lot of one-on-one sessions with students, okay? And so reach out and let me know. If you watch the meditation instruction, you need some more help with that, you need someone to hold you accountable, we can do that. We can make that happen, okay? So in reality, life and other people have other plans. The pandemic is another plan. It was not my plan. It wasn't the government's plan. It's somebody else's plan, something else's plan, okay? And my plan, in the scheme of things, isn't that important, right? Even though it's just a retreat, I've dreamed about it for years. It seemed like everything was coming together. Same with Chantlana this year. I've been doing chanting for years and I've never been invited to take part in that event. Finally, I was invited to take part in that event. And I had a great band together. We had a great set. And the day before it happened, nope, we're not going to do it. We're going to stream it. And zero emotional reaction to that. That's the awake mind. Okay, now we're streaming it. Okay. That's where we want to get, folks. We're not attached. Okay, this is what life is bringing me. This is what the present moment is arising as. I had a different idea. And in my mind, I think that other idea would have been better. But again, let's use present circumstances. We were on the cusp of this pandemic happening. Let's say we had Chantlana. I got to do my set live in front of everyone. Everyone's having a good time. And let's say there was someone or some ones in the audience with COVID-19. And what if we have one of those charts where they trace back a outbreak and huge spread of COVID-19 back to that event? It would have been really awful. So again, we can project and we can say, oh, well, that's so disappointing. It should have been this, it should have been that. Well, someone else has different plans about things. The other part of it is recognizing that my plans don't need to work out for me to be happy or peaceful. And that's a big one. And again, this comes back a lot to really living in the present moment. Because when we really live in the present, we find that we have everything that we could possibly need. Even if we are dying. That was something that Petra and I worked a little bit on, because her body was literally dying. And she was losing her eyesight and losing her hearing. Her senses were basically shutting down. The cancer had gotten into her brain and into her spinal column. And so she was very afraid about not being able to communicate with her family anymore. And so, we did some work where she went inside and I said, "Are they there?" And she said, "Yes, they are." So I said, "Okay, you don't need to be afraid about losing your senses. You don't need to be afraid about losing your eyesight or losing your hearing because your family is there inside of you." And so when we realize love, peace, and joy emanates from us, other people are not the cause of these things. Situations are not the cause of these things. What situations and other people do for us is sometimes they allow us to drop our ego, and then we experience joy and peace because the ego has dissolved. We have a moment of oneness with someone. We have a moment of connection. But the secret that we can learn is we can have that all the time, anytime, if we just learn to let go of the ego. It is that is keeping us from that experience. We don't need the right person or the right situation. And again, there's nothing wrong with making plans. There's nothing wrong with pursuing things that you enjoy. But the world will frustrate your plans. I promise you, it will. And so if we make plans and we are attached, then we will suffer. If we make plans and we're not attached, then we don't have to suffer. Maybe you've had the experience also of getting what you wanted and it wasn't what you wanted, right? So again, it all plays into the same thing of that lightness that we hold our plans with. So another thing that can come up is when we have plans and other people have other plans, or we have an idea and someone else has another idea, right? The ego likes to be right. It thinks it's extremely important. If you look at our culture right now, there's a lot of that going on, right? There seems to be two sides and everyone's arguing about who is right. Who is right. It's very important that, we be right. What's interesting is when we're awake, a lot of times we might find that even though we might believe that we're right, it's not important for us to use that like a battering ram or to hit someone over the head with that. If someone else does not want to see it our way, if someone else has a different point of view, we really don't have a problem entertaining their view because maybe they are more right than we are. Or maybe they're just as right. A lot of times with thoughts and things, it's not that there is a right. It really is that both can be right, or all the perspectives can be right, or there's some truth in each perspective. If we turn our perspective, we can see, oh yeah, okay, I can see that, I can see that. So sometimes we might find when we're awake that we let go of being right or making our point or whatever, so that we can experience a moment of intimacy, connection, compassion with somebody. That's more important than being right about something. And so one of my teachers puts it this way, or someone I've learned a lot from, do you want to be right or do you want to be happy? And that might seem like a false dichotomy or false distinction, but I promise you, in my experience, it's not. Do you want to be right? Because you can be right, and you can try and convince everyone you're right, or you can be happy. And then being right isn't so important anymore. Because most of us really want to be happy. And we might think that we need to be right to be happy, but you'd be surprised that actually the opposite is generally true. And this is why wise men like Socrates would say, as for me, I know nothing. As for me, I know that I know nothing. And this is an extremely smart man, the founder of Western philosophy. And he's going around saying, the reason why I'm wise is I actually know that I don't know anything. And my whole teaching is to show you that you don't know what you think you know. Why would he do that? Because he wants to free you. He wants you to experience the peace and the joy that he's experiencing. So anyway, guys, that's it for today's talk. I hope that was helpful. Planning, again, that's what we talked about. My dad encouraged me to sum up everything at the end, so I'll see if I can do that. There's a lot we talked about, but basically we talked about planning, and planning is necessary. We're not going to get away from planning in a modern human life. I don't think we need to get away from planning. We don't need to get away from thoughts. What we need is the right relationship with our thoughts. And again, how do I do that? What do I need to do? Meditate. What kind of meditation? Again, there's a free video up on the Patreon page. The Patreon link is there in the sidebar, the description of this talk. Feel free to check it out. Again, if you need support, if there's any way I can help support you, if you have any suggestions for me, questions for me, please reach out. I have, again, a little more time than I did pre-pandemic. I have no idea what post-pandemic will look like. I don't even know if there will be a post-pandemic. I certainly hope there will be, but sometimes it feels like it just goes on and on and on. And when we really live in the present, that's not such a problem. We wake up every day and we're still in the present. And when tomorrow comes, it will be the present. And when 10 years from now comes, it'll be the present. And again, in the present, we find we have everything that we truly need. That doesn't mean we won't die. It doesn't mean we won't face illness or hardship or challenges in our life. But when we really wake up, we realize that those are the things that make life precious and enjoyable. And so we don't really actually want them to go away. It's only when we're in an unawakened state that we think that we want, eternal physical life. Because life is eternal. And that's another thing that we can realize. Life is eternal. So we already have eternal life, but it will not take this form. This form, maybe 80, 90, 100 years. You could say if you're lucky, but maybe it's not lucky. Maybe it's not lucky to live to 100. I don't know. All right, everyone. So, Jai Bhagwan, I appreciate you coming. If you want to make some plans for tomorrow. My plan tomorrow evening is to do a yoga nidra. So it's a little different than we've done in weeks past. My schedule has changed. Some of the studios I was teaching for have stopped their online offerings or reducing them. So my class load has been reduced. So again, I want to thank you all for supporting me, because that's mainly how I'm being supported right now, is through your donations. So I appreciate that. But we'll have that donation-based class tomorrow, Yoga Nidra. I like doing in the evening, so try and tune in, 8 o'clock, same time. It'll probably be around 45 minutes, something like that, 35, 45 minutes. And then Tuesday morning, I'm going to do a Yang Yoga. So we're going to move the Yang Yoga to the morning. I think it would be better in the morning. And then I'll publish the rest of the schedule tomorrow for the rest of the week. But just if you want to make plans, God forbid, tomorrow evening, right here on Facebook, 8 o'clock, Yoga Nidra. Okay? Jai Bhagwan, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in. And I hope to see you soon. Namaste.